steadily increasing for several months in a row, the Australian property prices have begun to show some signs of slowdown. That's amid improving supply dynamics. Well, let's take a closer look. I'm Rachel Jones and this is kalkinemedia. Interestingly, the house price growth in Australia was the slowest since January 2021 in November, signifying that the market might have reached its peak. The changing dynamics in the property market has further fueled speculation of a potential drop in housing prices over the coming months. So has the Australian property market reached its peak? Well, the red-hot property market has kept many Aussies from participating in the demand surge. Prices in capital cities have skyrocketed to unprecedented levels, making it especially difficult for first-time home buyers. Nevertheless, the recent slowdown in price rise has emerged as a breath of fresh air for buyers who now have a chance to enter the market from where they were previously pushed out. However, housing prices are yet to take a breather in Brisbane or Adelaide. Brisbane recorded price rises of 2.9% and Adelaide recorded 2.6% in December 2021. The monthly growth rate reached a new cyclical high in December in these regions, with no evidence of slowdown just yet. Despite these substantial price rises, affordability concerns have been less pressing in these smaller cities relative to Sydney and Melbourne. While several economic indicators are still a long way off from pre-pandemic levels, economic revival across major towns and cities has given a new ray of hope of a gradual return to normalcy. When uncertainty continues to rule the markets, even the faintest hint of an economy retreating to familiar conditions is sometimes enough to boost consumer sentiment. Given the current scenario, analysts at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia expect property prices to dip as much as 10% by 2023. Now, much of the momentum to this decline is likely to be observed this year when the country might see a hike in interest rates. However, the effectiveness of the monetary policy tightening move and the extent of price drop would only be realised once the policy measure is implemented. While these forces point towards a further slowdown in property prices, it is hard to neglect some tailwinds that could offset potential price falls. With the increasing vaccination rate across Australia, one would hope to see less frequent disruptions from the pandemic, and the reopening of international borders could also be a net positive for the housing market. But it is hard to neglect the other factors at play, such as the possibility of new virus strains, which could widen the supply shortages once again. Well, if you like this video, you can like, share and comment on it. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get notifications for our latest videos. I'm Rachel, signing off for kalkinemedia.